You didn't really think that we were just going to leave you hanging until next season, did you? This is KD Drummond of bloggingtheboys.com, and today we're going to tackle the top 5 things that negatively set the pace for the Cowboys' 2012 season. We're going to be doing actually 2 lists. We're going to do the negatives and the positives. I thought that we would go ahead and start off with the negatives because honestly, the off-season is supposed to be the time for hope and eternal optimism and all of those sorts of things. So I want to get the negative stuff that happened last year out of the way first before we move on to the rest of our off-season schedule. Okay, we're going to start off number 5, and this is actually going to be from early in the season. Week 2, the Felix Jones kickoff fumble against Seattle. Now, it was the opening play of the game. Dallas was fresh off of their victory over the New York Giants in Week 1. Felix took the kickoff, ran upfield, and got a helmet put on the ball. He was carrying it like a loaf of bread, and it squirted out. Seattle recovered, and it really pretty much set the pace for the Cowboys. It was kind of like deja vu for a lot of Cowboys fans, the way that the game went. Everybody was real euphoric over what happened in the Week 1 game, and then everything turned out to be all bad during Week 2. It led the way. Obviously, Dallas defense did stop Seattle's offense from scoring a touchdown. They only gave up 3 points. On the very next time Dallas had the ball, they had a punt block in return for a touchdown. And the rest of the game just kind of turned out to be a comedy of errors. There were drop passes by Jason Witten, Dez Bryant. Everything pretty much seemed to go according to plan in that game. They weren't able to stop Russell Wilson, who at the time was really a non-issue, a non-factor in the games that they were playing based on what we were looking at the tape from the first game of the season and some of the stuff he did in the preseason. He just wasn't supposed to be able to do that to Dallas. So the Felix Jones kickoff fumble kind of set the pace for having an up and down year, fresh off the high of the first game to the ultimate low of being blown out in Seattle. Number 4, we're going to jump into the middle of the season, the Dez Bryant almost catch against the New York Giants. The Cowboys were 3-3 at the time. They were trying to sweep the New York Giants for the first time since 2007. Unfortunately, the Giants really weren't having any of it. They raced out to a 23-0 lead. Dallas fans were sitting on the edge of their couch, couldn't believe what was happening to their team in front of their faces. The Cowboys actually were able to turn the tide before halftime. They cut the lead to 13, came out, scored out of the break, scored again, took the lead 24-23 before the Giants had kicked 2 field goals to take the lead 29-24. It was getting down to the final seconds of the game. Tony Romo heaved a pass into the end zone. Dez Bryant leaped between 2 defenders, made a miraculous leaping catch, and when he fell down to brace his fall, he put his hand down before the rest of his body hit, and his hand landed out of bounds. His fingertips actually, they landed out of bounds on the back white line, and that was all she wrote. It was so close to being a transcendent moment for Dez Bryant and the team. I'm sure most Cowboys fans were just like me. They hopped up off the couch and they were running around yelling and screaming. I woke up my son, and he didn't appreciate that, but it was for a Cowboys victory. And then they said they're going to review. And sure enough, it turned out that it wasn't a completed catch because of his hand being out of bounds. Dallas had made a couple of those comebacks. They had just come back a couple weeks earlier to fall short against Baltimore, and then later in the season they would have another couple comebacks where they also fell short, including against New Orleans. You can also consider the Washington game some comebacks that fell short. So for everybody that wants to write the story of the Cowboys season as being, showing the tough and grittiness, there's also plenty of examples of the times when they couldn't complete the comeback. The number 3 play on the list that I think defined the Cowboys season negatively was a Romo sandwich, almost concussion sack against Tampa Bay in Week 3. Tampa Bay was a struggling team at the time. They had just, had a pretty good game against the New York Giants, even though they had lost. And Dallas really wasn't showing much in that Week 3 game against Tampa Bay. They were getting pressure on Romo whenever they wanted to. They were hitting him relentlessly, sacking him up and down the game. But in the fourth quarter, everything really came to a head. Dallas was up 10-7. They had a chance to go ahead and get a decisive score to go up by either 6 points or 10 points. And what had happened was that Dallas was inside actually inside the Tampa Bay red zone. Tony Romo got hit when Mackenzie Bernardow let Gerald McCoy go. He just shoved Mac to the side and came in on Tony Romo, hit him with his helmet. Adrian Claiborne came through Tyron Smith on the other side, hit Tony Romo in his back, and they sandwiched him. Romo was out laying down on the ground. He looked like he was concussed. He looked like he was asleep on the field. And that pretty much epitomizes a couple things about Dallas's problems for the 2012 season. Again, the offensive line was an issue. They couldn't protect Tony Romo. He was always running for his life over the season. And then a second side note is the fact that there was no helmet-to-helmet call on that hit. And it was an obvious helmet-to-helmet situation. Many times, I know every fan of every team feels this way, that their team doesn't get calls, but the Cowboys were royally jobbed on several occasions in 2012, and this was just another early example of how that was going to happen for the rest of the season. Play number 2 on the list, or situation number 2, I should say, was when Dallas only had 9 men on the field versus New Orleans in Week 16. They had just given up a big play. Marcus Colston had gone 60 yards downfield. Charlie Pepper missed a tackle. He was chased down. Colston was chased down by Sterling Moore. Neither one of them were even on NFL active rosters midway through the season, so that just lets you know how bad things were for Dallas. And then after the play, Dallas only put 9 men on the field when New Orleans was in a goal-to-go situation. How you cannot have 11 men on the field in a goal-to-goal situation is just inexcusable. The Cowboys under Rob Ryan, which is the theme of this topic number 2, under Rob Ryan have continuously had 10 men on the field or 12 men in the huddle penalties. For them to only have 9 men on the field in this dire situation when they were trailing by 7, like I said, it's inexcusable. It's just something that can't be done. This play signifies all the injuries that the Dallas defense had on the season. At one point, they had played 36 defenders for the year. The NFL average at the time was 28, so obviously they were going through some really tough injury situations, but Rob Ryan's defense just was always seemed to be in a state of confusion game in, game out, when he wasn't getting penalties for, personal foul penalties for jumping on the field. That's pretty much a signal of why Rob Ryan had to go. That leads us to our number 1 negative play that impacted the 2012 season. We're going to go to Week 4. Tony Romo versus Chicago Bears, the pick 6 to Charles Tillman. It was Monday night. It was on national TV. The game was actually close. There was not too much offense in the game. There was about 3 minutes left when Dallas got the ball. They were only trailing 3-0. And Tony Romo had just tried to pitch to DeMarco Murray, who fumbled the ball, and fortunately the Cowboys were able to recover. That put them in 3rd and long. There was a blitz coming from the left side. Des Bryant was out that way. He was being covered man-to-man by Charles Tillman. Tillman acted like he was going to bail, and Romo obviously saw this, and he called for the hot route for Des to either run a slant or a hitch or some kind of short pattern that would have made him available to be the hot read on the play. Unfortunately, Des didn't run the right route in the situation. Charles Tillman, again, he baited Romo. He acted like he was going to go deep, and that would leave the underneath open. And then Romo threw a pass that he shouldn't have run, because there was a split second in there for him to realize that Des actually wasn't coming back. I know it was a bit of a timing route, but when you watch the replay, things just didn't look kosher in that play. And I think the onus falls on both players for doing the incorrect thing in that situation. All in all, though, that play just signified the early season miscommunication of Tony Romo and Des Bryant. It's a carryover from things that we had seen in the previous seasons where the two just weren't on the same page. Obviously, you know the story of the season. You know that things eventually worked out, but at the time, nobody was saying this. At the time, everybody was saying that Des Bryant was a lost cause and he would never get his head on straight and so on and so forth. So I think that kind of signifies our early struggles of the season of the Cowboys trying to get on the same page with each other, which they eventually did, but not to the point of any great gain as they ended the season 8-8. So there you have it, the top 5 plays. I can't even call it the top 5 plays because that's such a misnomer. The bottom 5 plays that negatively impacted the Cowboys season, that set the theme for the 2012 Cowboys season. Make sure you stay tuned. As I said earlier, we're going to be right back with another video on the top 5 plays that positively impacted the season. Something that I'm sure you're going to get a lot more enjoyment out of. Once again, it's KD Drummond of Blogging the Boys. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, SBN Blogging the Boys, and don't forget about our other channels, SBN NFL and SB Nation. Salute.